Good. First, something about myself. I had been working here as a full professor for 1 year, but because I'm working in the diplomatic community, I'm kind of traveling the whole world, and so it didn't work out that my family life and my teaching life fit together. And so I made an arrangement with the university here that I only come twice a year to teach several classes. So that's why I'm kind of an adjunct professor. I also have worked last year in the United States at the George Mason University as an adjunct professor. So my life is very, very nomadic. So I'm kind of working in different cultures and with different people from all over the world. So when I'm not teaching, I'm a maker or inventor or artist. So lately, a lot artists. We will later in this class see a couple of Internet of Things projects for the arts, and I hope I can encourage you also to kind of, as you are in Linz, where arts is very important in connections with technology, I hope I will be able to encourage you too, to kind of glimpse a little bit at the arts. In a professional sense, you can also hire me as an independent Internet of Things consultant. So if you have your own startup and you need something to evaluate or certify, I'm happy to work for you. If you want to contact me, you can create an email, or kind of definitely very important, go to my website. So this is where this ulno name comes from. This is just the contraction of my first and last name. And in recent times, people started to pronounce it ulno, because the Americans cannot say a name which starts with U. And so I embrace that, so you will know, yeah? So we will pronounce ulno as you will know, and I hope after you have taken my class, you will all know a lot about Internet of Things. I graduated from Germany, from RWTH Aachen, and as you see, that was already kind of Internet of Things like. So my PhD thesis was on home automation. And in between, I've done a lot in search and software engineering, but nowadays, Internet of Things is a hot topic again. And so my main research is back again in the area of Internet of Things. I teach here home and building automation, so if you stay until the master's program, you might see me again in a subtopic of what you learn now. I do still work in software engineering, so you will also see that I'm very interested in something which is called requirements engineering and how people can talk to their potential customers. So we will have a couple of small exercises in this class too, where I want you to learn to pitch your ideas and how to make kind of new product ideas. And that fits very well with the whole Internet of Things idea. Yeah, I've been all around the world. So I've taught in the US, in Germany, in Austria, in Estonia, in Kazakhstan, in Singapore, and a little bit in Indonesia. And recently I am stationed in Brazil and the town Brasilia, but I'm working a lot with artists from Rio de Janeiro. So if there's anything international, you want to know about different cultures, different teaching cultures, if you're interested to do an intern somewhere abroad, feel free to talk with me. I have lots of contacts in the US and lots of contacts now in Brazil. So, and lots of stuff. What I do here is hands-on. So I told you should bring your computers, or at least something where you can take some notes. But it's best if you write this, what we are doing now here, down in a text file, because you have to later submit this. Why do you have to submit it? I will explain in a little bit, but because I've just talked now about you, I want you to at least reflect about why you are here and what you bring to the table. I will not assess this right now, but you will later do a little bit of team building, and there you want to share this information. So I want to know from you, I know you all come out of a program where you have done something with programming already. This is second year here, yeah? Or third already, third year in your bachelor program. Yeah, so you are experts in mobile computing already. So I would like to know what type of programming experience you have. So have you worked really in big projects? Have you only learned programming here? Or have you some specific languages you are working in? That would be nice in here. I will just, after this, you write this down, do a little hand count so that I have an idea. Then I would like to know if you have worked before with microcontrollers. Yeah? Do you know the Arduino? Do you know an ESP8266? Or maybe some of you have worked with the particle photon, or you might have worked with other microcontroller devices, some Atmel devices, I don't know, or ARM. Then I would like to know if you have some idea about single board computers, so mainly the Raspberry Pi. Some of you might have worked with BeagleBone or Orange Pi or Banana Pi or the Intel Edison or some of these other computers. So just list some you had some experience with. Very important for me is to know if you have some crafty skills. So if you feel that you're yourself a maker, or that you actually also, in addition to programming, are able to do some craft, because when we do Internet of Things, you also will have not only to use cables and plug things together, but we might need some little cardboard hardware to see if we have some skills to actually, in the physical world, to put something together. Then write some of the keywords down, what you already know about Internet of Things. That kind of leads to the next exercise. And I would like you to see your expectations from this class. So that's the main point, which is interesting for me, is what you think you will get here in the introduction of Internet of Things. I think you all have to take it. It's an obligatory class. Okay, so some of you will just expect a grade, but I hope some of you will also expect to learn something, and that something is interesting for me. So I give you kind of 5 to 10 minutes now here in class to address these points, and just write them down with the idea that you not only want to share these later with me, but also with a potential partner in a team. Yeah? So that you can introduce yourself and say, hey, I bring to the table that I can actually sew. Or I bring to the table that I'm really good with cardboard. Or I'm a good programmer, or I'm a good designer. So put this in there. Good. Doesn't need to be perfect what you write down now about yourself. I just wanted to reflect you because you listened to what I was doing here before. So give me a small hand count. So who of you already knows Arduino? Who has worked with Arduino before? Okay. Who of you knows then ESP8266? Nobody. You will after this class. It's basically an Arduino with Wi-Fi, but we will talk much more about that. Who has worked with a Raspberry Pi before? Oh, that is good. That will help. Who is part of a maker community, or who sees himself to be a very crafty person? Okay, good. All of you will after this class. Does anybody of you sew? Can you use a sewing machine or sew? Okay, good. We have a couple of LEDs you can actually sew into clothes, and there might be some project where that is a lot of fun to actually use conductive thread and do something with building your own wearable here in the class. Who has an idea about Internet of Things? Who can talk about Internet of Things and kind of has an opinion when talking about Internet of Things? Nobody? A little bit. Okay, good. Promise you, you will already have one after this class today. The expectations I will read later. So I hope I will fulfill yours, but I will react to what you have written down now. What are the programming languages you guys have done before? So everybody can program in Java, I assume, yeah? How many people do C, have done C, C++? Oh, most of you. Great. Python? How is Python knowledge? Yeah, these are the main things we need. Anybody of you is a Linux user and can do some scripting in Bash? That might also come in pretty handy in this class. So, introductions we have basically done today. Then I will talk a little bit with you about the syllabus and how this class works. And then we will move on to the definition of Internet of Things and generate an opinion about what we think is part of the Internet of Things. And then I will quickly outline to you what you will do today in the laboratory. So there, you can use this link, or you can use the web page which is linked in Moodle to actually open up the syllabus. This is a very, very small summary of this. So let's take, yeah, and I think I don't have internet, great. But I might still have an offline version of this one open here, great. So you should be able to open this site here. Let me see if I can make that a little smaller. Yeah. So we have about 62 hours each of you with me. I have a little more because I teach 2 groups. And to mention that, because this is a 5 ECTS class, I expect from you more work than the work we are actually working together. You can about assume that you have to invest about 125 hours, plus minus 10 hours, so, or more. So depending if you like it, of course you can spend more for this class. Grading is normal. What is kind of a little weird here in my class is how we get to the grade. So there will be no real final exam. There is a really big piece you will create in this class, which is called a portfolio. You see kind of my connection with the arts. The nice thing about a portfolio is that it's a great piece you can actually use later to apply somewhere, because you will write down all the projects you are doing here, and then you just pick that for a potential employer, and they allow you to read portfolios. So the biggest thing here is a portfolio. It's both for 50% of the grade, but it's also for yourself. So I hope you will appreciate that I will kind of come around and help you making a nice portfolio. And this is also, this is yours. So I'm really getting really upset if you copy the personal part of the portfolio. Of course, there will be teamwork. And in the teamwork, I don't want you to write down double. So if you have a document you create in the team, just link it in the portfolio. Yeah? And we will write this portfolio in Git. So everybody of you, or at least every team of you, will have a Git repository. Does everybody of you know Git? I hope so, yeah? And 3 years ago, nobody did. So it's really nice to see that now I come to a class and people actually know Git. So this will be in Git, and so the nice thing, if you have a kind of, yeah, collection of files, you can actually link in them. But I want you to do it in programmer style. So I want you to write actually your portfolio in Markdown or restructured text. Yeah, so basically you code it and then you link it like you do normal programming documentation. So of course, if you have code or if you have a document you do in the team together, you can just link to it. Yeah, so for me, I want to just have a personal guide through your portfolio. So I want to know, okay, my portfolio starts here in the repository, start reading there, and then I can basically click through the portfolio for your version. So you will do you will basically put everything in there and kind of write a little bit documentation so that I can see your personal view of the material we do here in the class. It doesn't need to be fancy writing, can be German, can be English, can be mixed, is fine. So I just see it from the perspective that I want to quickly see what you have done, what your troubles were, what your successes were, and what your thoughts are actually in this class. So I want to have a little bit of reflection in there, like what we did today was good for me for learning that, or today I was really at a loss because he was so fast and did some magic I didn't, or it will take me some more time to understand. Or it's kind of weird that he always kind of makes us do small things and then goes back to lecturing mode. So that's kind of a weird, this is fine. So I want to have a personal opinion in the portfolio. And this thing should not be the same as your neighbors. Yeah, if you copy that stuff, I get upset. But if you copy things you do together, that's fine. Just mention it. Or even if you work with others in the class, if they help you, just make a link and say, oh, we took this material from that person. Then I'm happy. So this will be 50% of your grade. And you hand over this final portfolio on the exam day. Yeah? And the exam day, you say, make your last check-in. If you're not totally ready, you just tell me, oh, I need another week or so. But the idea is you hand over the portfolio on the final day. And on the final day, we also have the final project presentations. There will be a small project, will be a big project, and the big project will be presented on the exam day in the end of the class. And that, the two projects we do are 30% of the grade, so there will be a small project, it's 10, and the big last project was 20%. And then you get kind of 10% nearly for free, and this is what we are just doing. So my lecture style is always a little lecturing, a little exercise for you. So we kind of do a more flipped classroom interactive style here in class. And these little things you do, you don't have to curate these notes. Yeah, but these notes you just collect in one document, put it somewhere in your Git repository, and then submit the tag of this Git commit in Moodle. So you see already on Moodle there's one submission, and the notes on who you are, and there will be a little bit of definition of Internet of Things. So you put this in a document and submit this text as your submission today. And basically I will not check it. Yeah, I will only check that you have done that. So if I see that you have done this and submitted this at least 10 out of 12 times. Yeah? So basically you can even not submit 2 of them. And we have 12 sessions totally together, and if you submit 10 of this, you get 10% of the class for free. It's just for submitting and proving that you were looking at my lectures. You can even do that from outside. I just want you to see that you engage with the lecture here. So that's 10% nearly for free. And then there's this 10% extra activities. So I don't like handing out 1s or 8 in my class. So if you do everything I ask you, you get a B, you get a 2. Yeah? So you have to do more than I ask you to do. And that can be a plethora of things. That can be helping your neighbor and kind of mentioning I really helped some teams here a lot. That can be being active in chatting and helping others on the Moodle forum or on the public forum we will have for this. This can be writing a driver for a framework, for an Internet of Things framework, finding out a cool solution for an Internet of Things framework, bringing something external, kind of finding a cool arts project you want to present here which has to do with Internet of Things. So, but you basically have to go a little bit out of the way and do something more than just what I ask you. Yeah? And you can actually discuss this too, and also discussing with me and asking questions is extra activity. Yeah? So I want to create a culture of communication and community around Internet of Things here, and if you do that, you will get a couple of points, promised. So this is how the grading works. Read through the description here. Let's check out the learning objectives. So we want to, you see sometimes the term critically in my lectures, yeah? So that's pretty important for me that you generate some critical thinking here, yeah? That you not only know what the Internet of Things is, but also know that it's kind of very weakly defined, that there can be other definitions of the Internet of Things. Yeah? So I want you to survive in a discussion with somebody else about the Internet of Things and say, well, in my view, that is more this here, and what you're doing is more automotive computing or wearable than pure Internet of Things. You're just looking, well, home automation is not all Internet of Things. So I want you to develop a critical understanding about what the Internet of Things is in your own opinion. Then, of course, this class will be actually a lot about hardware. Yeah? And Internet of Things has something to do with connecting things to the Internet. So I want you to be able, after this class, to basically connect anything to the internet, yeah? From a chair to a table to your clothes. So I want you to be able to put actors and sensors on anything, yeah? And actually be able to interact with this. Then, of course, I want you to be able to make something reasonable with it, to actually put code in there. Yeah? So we are all here computer scientists in this program. And some of the people who are from outside might be artists or doing, but coding is a really important skill for our life. And then knowing which parts, which languages, which pieces of code we have to put together to build a system and to make an Internet of Things is one of the learning outcomes we have in this class here. Yeah, you will implement a lot of Internet of Things systems here, so there will be a lot of work in the labs. I hope you will enjoy that. And I want to talk a little bit about testing and kind of also, again, reflecting about how to set these systems up in a nice way. And as there will be projects and project presentations, I want to also help you in making these as good as possible and to give you a little bit idea about product pitching, and not from an academic standpoint, but more from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So some of you might have some really cool ideas, which you might be able to take to a hackathon or so and try out to maybe develop further outside of this class. Or you might get ideas which you don't have to implement here, but I hope you kind of come into this mindset that you get an idea how to easily pitch a project in the Internet of Things realm. Okay, we had that. So there will be two main communication ways here in this class. One is in Moodle. Last time I tried everything on Matrix, but students were unhappy, so I will try to do a hybrid approach this time to use Matrix and Moodle. Matrix is something like IRC. And you might be too young to know really about the IRC. Have you heard about IRC? The Internet Relay Chat. You might have seen a couple of open source projects which still use the IRC to do their support and online chatting about it. And Matrix is kind of an evolution from the IRC. It's a little bit like Slack, it's a little bit like Discord, but it's free. So that's why I use it in class. I used Slack once for this class, and then after 2 months or a 6 session teaching the class, all the data was gone, and Slack kind of stole my data from the class, and I couldn't even grade my students about what they were doing in the class. So I will never use Slack in my class again. Good, so this is why you guys, and we will use a framework later in this class, which is called ulno.net, yeah, fits. And this ulno.net has its own chat channel, and the outside listeners who will also kind of a little bit interact with this class are also on this chat. So they might ask you some things and some problems, so it would be great if you help them, but they might also help you if you have a problem. And of course, I should be very active in this forum. So I will monitor that, and I will monitor the public Moodle forum. So if you have something which is better discussed in private, just here in this, then put it there. But I hope most of the things we could discuss are going on the ulno.net chat. So as I said, then you also need a Git repository. In the labs, we will form teams of 2, and later we will merge teams of 2 to teams of 4. Depending on how many persons we have in the class, we might have 1 or 2 teams which have 3 persons in them already today. But I want you to work with at least 1 other person. You're just more productive if you can work with at least 2 persons. And we don't have enough hardware for everybody of you. So in this Git repository, there's basically everything I want to have in there. Especially the portfolio. Yeah? So I want you to have at least at all times 1 person document everything what you do. And really important, also document what is going wrong. I think we teach way too less failure in our class. In my class, I want you to fail sometimes.
So we have 2 portfolios in one Git repository, because you say that the portfolio is individual for every person.
Yes, but you just give me an entry link. So I think it's easier to handle both portfolio in one Git repository because you will have shared stuff. But if you are a Git master, if you're a Git guru, make 2 repositories and make remotes to the other Gits. So that is fine for me too. Yeah. But I think pragmatic is you have one repository per team, and you might do the merging of the 2 repositories when we merge the teams for the second project. I don't know if you, but the idea is you just make the folder structure so that it doesn't collide. So do something like team and then put the 2 names you have in the beginning in there. And then later you just make a cross remote to the others and import the repository of the others into it. And then you just have 2 versions of the repositories. You have to see if you, in principle, I don't care if you make that stuff public or not. I think because the portfolio is something very specific and personal, it's very hard to copy from somebody else. And I don't mind if other people can read your personal portfolio because it will make the other portfolio better. But you have to decide. I think maybe it's still in your personal interest in the beginning to have a closed repository on GitLab or so, where it's allowed to have several persons working on a closed repository. But I think you can figure that one out. But if you want to do it on GitHub and be completely open and transparent, fine with me. Yeah, it's your choice. But then there is some personal data which goes in there, which I don't know if you want to have in there. Especially now we describe your person. Yeah, be aware at least when you check that in there that some of this information might be public. Yeah, again, I want you to use Markdown or restructure text to write it. Anybody hasn't worked, any person doesn't know what Markdown is? If you look at projects on GitHub, you kind of see, if you look at a README file there, you see that it's nicely formatted. And then if you look at the code, you see that it's actually just kind of text with kind of equal signs and some ways of simply putting in links and doing these connections. So you can learn both restructure text and Markdown in 15 minutes. Yeah, just Google for Markdown cheat sheet or restructure text cheat sheet. These are 2 kind of wiki dialects, basically. So it's basically writing down text, and the nice thing is, in comparison to using Word or so, that we can version it. Yeah, so if you write in this dialect, it's easy in a repository to manage text, growing text. And you use less binary, and you don't less spoil your repository, because I'm really picky about binaries in a Git repository. Don't do that. Yeah, just if you want to have a video somewhere, upload it on YouTube, link it, or put it on Vimeo and link it. If some images you really created yourself, fine, they might be able to go in there. But anything which you generate, anything you want to compile, make sure it doesn't end up in your Git repository. Just put a manual in there, like run this command to create that binary. And makes the work with Git much, much faster and easier to manage. I want, at least until tomorrow, after the lab today, we'll probably create the Git repository, so post the link, each of you, even if you have a shared one, post the link of the Git repository on there. And I have an upload entry already in there. I think we have until tomorrow, or day after tomorrow evening to put it there. I hope you can find time to do it earlier. So, I hate lecturing, but I did it already quite a bit. Yeah, it's kind of, I have been a student once too, and I really hated sitting in the lecture and having to listen to the lecture all the time, so I wanted to always teach in a way that I give you as much interaction and as much hands-on as possible in your class. Why? So you might have seen this. This is kind of something from Pedagogy. So there's some really smart guys who have thought about how do you learn best. And lectures are not on the top of the list of how you learn best. So Bloom's taxonomy of learning describes in, how well and what are the qualities of learning. And so one of the first things you do is remember it. So somebody tells you something, you might be able to remember it. So there are statistics. If I lecture to you, you can, if you're really good, you can remember up to 10% of what I tell you. So you will forget about 90% of what I just tell you lecture style. But if you're good, you might get up to the 10%. If you're really good, you might even understand what I tell you there. So these are kind of the first, the lowest two tiers. I think that's what we usually address in a lecture. So when we lecture, we usually want you to remember and understand. But my idea is to get you higher. So what we're doing in the labs usually is we apply what we have done in the lecture. So you will start applying right after this today. But I hope, because I let you fail in class, and I want you to make mistakes and kind of try things out on your own, that's why I want to get you to the highest level, where you analyze and reflect and evaluate what you are actually doing there, and be creative. So this goes into this critical thinking part. So the idea is that you come to the highest level, and that means actually that you might do things I can't do. You have to surpass me. So again, this point, I want you to do things I don't ask you to do. So I have this weird lecture style where I try to get you always up there. Try to ask questions, try to be critical, try to try out new things you haven't dared to try before, because you are in a safe environment and actually exploring and failing is part of it. So I want to know all these things, how to fail in your portfolios later, because I basically give you credit for failing. So don't be afraid if something breaks. Don't burn too much of the hardware. The Raspberry Pis are expensive, but some of the hardware, if you burn an LED, it might be a good experience. And you might have heard about the idea of a flipped classroom. So that means that I'm becoming more of a coach. So I'm more a guide of you than the subject matter expert. I know, I do think I do know a lot of stuff about Internet of Things, so I might be a good source and sometimes better and faster than Google. But in principle, Google knows more than I. And you as a collective also probably know more than I. At least you have much more resources in terms of processing power than I ever have. So if I can utilize that, I can get you further than if I just tell you what to do. So that means there will be a lot of things where you have to use your laptops, have to write something down, have to Google something during the class, and then I have some mechanisms how you can share that knowledge with your classmates. So there's a lot of kind of pedagogical ideas you will get to know during this class. So this will be a little weird because, you don't know exactly what I want, and you don't get the really right solution, so you have to look at several solutions and compare them to make your own. But this is how I get you faster up there and faster to do critical thinking. And you actually develop some social skills. So you will maybe enjoy working with some of your classmates, or you might hate working with some of your classmates. But this is also very important because you will face that in your real job at one point too. Internet of Things. So once upon a time, it wasn't very important. And even Google didn't know anything about Internet of Things. But lately, it has become quite a buzzword. And you find, if you search for Internet of Things, you will later see you find a lot on Internet of Things. I have not updated this slide actually. So this is already over 30 here. So even in Brazil, I've given, I think, already 5 talks on Internet of Things related topics. And we will maybe get a couple of these talks also during the lecture here. It depends really. I want to also get some externals from the US and from Brazil in here in the end, and would like to have a couple of entrepreneurs talking to you, but I have to play this a little bit by ear. I don't know. Timing is really bad because when it's morning here, it's deep in the night in the US and in Brazil, so maybe I have to find somebody from Singapore to actually talk here too. So, but Google proves Internet of Things is important, and Google knows everything. So, and as I promised, so we have, when is this over here? 10:25, yeah? So as I promised, you have to do a lot of things, and this is another small exercise which needs to go into your lecture record from today. So I want you to Google a little bit about the Internet of Things, but of course I want you to do this in a structured way. So this is why I give you some tasks. So don't just Google the definition of Internet of Things. I want you to read about the Internet of Things and note down 3 domains. Yeah? So where is the Internet of Things used? In which domains does it work? You know one domain already, home automation. Yeah? Because I teach home automation. So this is one of the domains. I mentioned some in talking already. But so find at least 3 domains in addition to home automation, which are part of the Internet of Things. 2 commonly used data protocols. Yeah? So there's something how the things of the Internet are talking to each other. So I want you to pay attention on that too. And 2 typical devices used in the Internet of Things projects you find now yourself. I suggest search both in English and in German. So Internet der Dinge might also yield some nice results, but I would suggest start searching about Internet of Things. You can read the Wikipedia page or any other definitions, that's fine, but kind of hunt especially for the domains, the data protocols, and the typical devices. You have 10 minutes for this. Good, so that looks all pretty promising, but I will give you even more information now before we start discussing this stuff. So I have visited a couple of events when I was working in Washington, D.C. at TIA. These are the friendly guys who made standards for, a lot of standards for serial communication and the internet. So, and they do some very nice pedagogical and interesting movies, so I recommend everybody to check out their other movies. They have some for 5G and 4G explanation movies, which might be pretty relevant for some other classes you are actually taking here, so I encourage you to check that out. So I will play now 10 minutes of this movie, which is linked here, and yeah, you just add to the list you just made. So while we are watching this, try to extend your domain and appliance device list by each 2. Yeah, so you might discover some domains which you haven't had, and let's add them. You also want, while you watch the movie, think about, why is Internet of Things good? What are the benefits? Yeah, so why do we want Internet of Things? And what are the challenges? Yeah, so there's some trouble with the Internet of Things, which is addressed in the movie. You also want to write down these. I think I will skip the last steps here, so just do the first 3. So, okay. We didn't watch the security part, but we want to move now to the open discussion. So, of course, I'm also, we shouldn't not, it's before we do that. I want to get some ideas from you. Okay, so what kind of domains have you found? So I just want a number of domains now. So let's start over there. So what were kind of the domains where the Internet of Things?
Did I find all what kind of domains?
Just 2 domains from what we found. I will just try to collect now.
I found one from Pedagogy about smart lock, how to produce
Smart lock, security, access control. Actually, the domain is access control. So other domain. Healthcare. Yeah, we just mentioned it over there. What type of healthcare? In general? Okay. Because they mentioned the elder care there too, so kind of assisted living and stuff. It's kind of something special or helping disabled persons. So in general, and then often these 2 are looked at separately. Something from back there. So other domains where the Internet of Things is used. Cryptocurrency. Yeah, I love that you bring that up. And I have an opinion about that. Yeah, okay, blockchain might be interesting in Internet of Things. I agree with you, but in how far I think might need another discussion. Very good point. Other domains?
smart
Yeah, smart homes, yeah, of course. Home automation. What else? Transport, yeah, logistics and transport. Anybody has kind of warehouse management or something like that? That's actually the origin of the Internet of Things. If you look historically at it, the first person who defined the term Internet of Things was actually looking how they could monitor incoming and outgoing products out of their warehouse. So the Internet of Things comes actually from this transported warehouse area. Other domains. Space? Yeah. It's actually very, very good because I haven't put this there, yeah, but I think it's pretty relative for the Internet of Things. What do you find about space in the Internet of Things? Yeah. And that leads a little bit to robotics. Anybody kind of found robotics? Okay. Anything else we missed?
Wearables.
Wearables, of course, and what are you guys all studying here? Mobile computing, so mobile phones is a pretty important part of it, yeah.
Household devices.
Household devices, yeah, smart home, household. Which types?
So some phone, so smart coffee maker, something.
Yeah, okay, but this is all home automation. But anybody?
Smart payment.
Smart payment. Oh yeah, and that kind of goes to the cryptocurrency direction too. Yeah.
Smart cities.
Smart cities is a very important kind of aligned topic.
Actually, you can say anything with smart before the actual word. You can say, I don't know, smart car, smart.
RFID cards is something. Yes.
So basically, as you have mentioned at the beginning, you just can't take everything and make it sort of
Yeah, but okay. Now, if you start talking about more abstract things, what is kind of one of these abstract qualities which is inherent for the Internet of Things? And they, I think, mentioned that as about every fifth word in this movie we just watched. Connectivity. Yeah? Connectivity is a really important part. What else? Every 10th word in the movie is about trillion. So we talk about billions of devices and trillions of data. So connectivity and data. Can you guess what is the third concept I think is really important?
Security.
Yeah, security is important, but it's not inherent quality. It's actually one of the inherent missing qualities of the Internet of Things, not one of the existing qualities. So, okay, I will reveal that in a second, but let's think about quickly about devices. So what type of devices have you discovered as examples? What devices did you stumble upon when you looked up the Internet of Things?
GPS trackers.
GPS trackers. Okay, that's good. What else?
Insulin pumps.
Insulin pumps. Oh yeah, this is very nice. What else? That's all. The Google Home. Thanks, because I was waiting actually for that one in the domains for home automation. Voice assistance is a very interesting domain in the Internet of Things. Good. What other devices? Kind of more hardware specific. Have you kind of
Philips Hue.
Philips Hue. Yeah, that is a really good example. Yeah, I have it actually listed on my slide. What else?
Smart TVs.
Smart TVs, entertainment devices. What about anybody find kind of the typical microcontrollers?
The QPG 6095.
The what?
QPG 6095, some kind of smartphone QPG.
I have to look that one up. That's interesting. These are the cool findings actually. Students find things I've never heard about. It's great. Arduino Uno, yeah, of course. That is kind of really dominant in the maker area of the Internet of Things. Anybody found something about 3D printers and kind of all that making stuff? No? Okay. And let's move on. So we mentioned actually, before it was called Internet of Things, when I started working in that area, we called it ubiquitous computing. You saw the little history lesson about Mark Weiser and the vision of kind of computing going into the background. So when I learned about Internet of Things, it was called ubiquitous or pervasive computing. So it's a little bit like, you all know about cloud computing, don't you? And you also know that cloud computing wasn't called cloud computing before it was called. It existed before cloud computing, but it was called differently. Yeah? So it was grid computing, it was virtual networks, it was virtualization of computer resources, and then at one point it all merged into cloud computing. Same thing is actually here in Internet of Things. We have all these different domains, which kind of under some specific concept merge together into one big domain. Yeah, so we mentioned home automation. Yeah, urban computing and smart cities. That's a really good point because I've been working in that area lately a lot. Embedded computing, so everybody who found something about microcontrollers. It was also often called actor-sensor networks. And in this realm, so you might have heard machine-to-machine computing very often in the talk. So this is something which will always come back now in this class. We will talk a lot about M2M. Mobile computing, variable computing. So what people often dismiss is this hacking-making culture, which has a heavy influence on Internet of Things because it enables you and communities to influence the development. Of course, industry wants to have their share and build new products, but you are students, you might become a startup, you might tinker with things yourself at home and then come up with something. So this idea of actually taking solutions, sharing them, and then trying out something new is also really important for the Internet of Things. Then, of course, we had big and actionable data. But there's one point we haven't mentioned now, which is systems. So one device is never an Internet of Things. One device, if you just build one robot or so, it's not really about the Internet of Things. I don't know, did you have a class with just learning how to use Arduinos or so here in the school? No, we will start from, okay. But you might have done something in school where you did some little Blink application or kind of using a motor or so. This is relevant for the Internet of Things, but it is not the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things becomes interesting when you put devices together and coordinate them and make an application which uses all these devices together. So when we build a system of things. So my class here will work a lot about this idea of systems and connectivity. I don't know if we have so much time to do, we will do a little bit of data visualization here in class, but we probably will not come to the point where we can do machine learning here and really kind of make decisions on the data. So that might be a different class where we have to. And yeah, I'm glad somebody found the Hue and some devices. And so what you see on the right here was my first time I was actually dealing with the Internet of Things. So I met a colleague and we put all the devices we had on the floor and was thinking what we could come up with, what would be the best Hello World application we could present to the world in doing Internet of Things. And so we built, yeah?
Can you go one slide back? What's the big thing that looks like a main block?
This is just an assembly of tons of devices. So my colleague at that time kind of built this box where he kind of glued different microcontrollers on this box and connected them so they had a little kind of all-in-one package to go around and talk about it. It wasn't Internet of Things at that time, but then we figured out that his box was actually the perfect Internet of Things presentation box. Yeah, so there's, I think, an Intel Edison on there, and there's an Arduino Uno on there, and a couple of temperature sensors on there, so it's kind of his demonstration box, and that's why we added it to it. So and then our Hello World application was actually the smart doorbell, so you could push a button and lots of things actually turn on at the same time and report it, and we send it over the network so that you see that somebody is at your door, and it's connected to your local lights. So we had the Philips Hue in there at that point. So that was basically, again, this very simple application of you push a button and the light goes on. So I call this application where we have a button and a light connected to something which is remote controllable the hello world of the Internet of Things. And this is what you will do today in the lab. You will build the hello world of the Internet of Things. And I'm very sorry, my instructions are usually a little bit of generic. Yeah, so I want you to tinker with it and figure things out. So this is all you will get for today. But of course, I'll run around in the lab and help you. So in the lab, you will get a kit, at least I think one for each 2 persons. There is a Raspberry Pi in there. And we have the connectivity problem here in the university. So because I want you all to work with networks, everybody of you gets a Raspberry Pi. And I have software online, my own Raspberry Pi image, which turns this into a Wi-Fi router. So the idea is in the lab you connect it to the Ethernet outlet. And so the first thing we have to actually do is we have to set up our router, because then we can wirelessly connect it. So first task is setting up the wireless router, download the image, and burn it to the SD card of the Pi, run it, and see that you can log in and find it. So second thing is hello world. Yeah, so we have a lot of these Arduino-like devices you will get. This is the ESP8266. I don't know, but we should show it to the camera too. So the ESP8266, and this is a specific development board of the ESP8266. It's the Vemos D1 Mini. You can buy this for €2.50 on AliExpress or €5 on Amazon locally. And it's a mini computer with Wi-Fi. It's like an Arduino on steroids. And you can use the Arduino IDE to program it. In the beginning, we will do just that. We will use Arduino IDE. Later in the class, I will show you different frameworks, how to mass manage multiple of these devices and program them over the network. But today, you will just classically try Blink on this device. And then, of course, you want to work in pairs and kind of see you will have trouble. Some of the cables will not work, and yeah, you will see. So there's lots of things which can go wrong. And important, document everything, also when things go wrong. I'm not sure if we will manage today, but at least tomorrow we should manage. I want this to be remote controlled. Yeah, I want that you can actually log this one into the local Wi-Fi of the router we set up, and then call a web REST call to run a little web server on it. And if I call it, that you can then switch the LED from your phone or from your computer via the Wi-Fi network. That's all. So, but I'm pretty sure you will need some time doing it. There are a couple of videos online where I describe how to flash an image to the Pi. There's a link to, if you go to the ulno IoT website, which is linked in the class, you will see a backlink to a video where you can look about how to flash an image to the Pi, but you can also just follow the text and do it there, or you can just come in the lab and I show you. Good, then good luck, and let's see how far you guys can get.